Nice to meet everyone. My name is Lawrence Bennett. I look after financial services propositions for eBay in the UK. We're here today to talk a bit about business financing, how it can help grow your business, take it to the next level, next stage. We're going to talk a bit about a few things. We've got a great panel. We're going to talk a bit about the state of the market today, what's wrong with it, what's right with it. We're going to talk a bit about what funding can do for your business, how you could use it, and try and get some real-life experiences of how funding has changed businesses. And we're going to take a little bit of a look forward as well to try and understand about what is not being well served today, and what we're working on from a kind of technology point of view. So we've got a great panel. I'll let them introduce themselves, starting with Will.
Hi, I'm Will. I am the MD of Quality Brands Outlet. We are a fashion clothing store. We primarily trade on eBay. We also have a website. And we've been trading for about 4.5 years, and yeah, we're doing all right. So, well, we were.
Hi everyone, I'm Jason, and I am Managing Director of a company called Rocket Railways. As the name would suggest, we do all parts for your model railways, and we've been trading a similar amount of time actually. We started just before COVID, so we've been around for just under 4 years now. So yeah, and predominantly we sell on eBay as well as on other sites as well.
Hello everyone, my name is Jakob. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at YouLend. YouLend is one of eBay's partners for offering financing. We offer financing to UK sellers. We've worked with Will and Jason before, and we've been really excited about the partnership over the last 1.5 years, where we financed around 10,000 different sellers. So looking forward to sharing some of our learnings today with you. Very interesting agenda put together.
Cool. Both Will and Jason have been told they can speak freely. They don't need to say how great eBay is or how great YouLend is. Neither do you. So if you've had experiences today or you want honest questions, absolutely no issues asking them. So starting a little bit from where we are today, for those of you who don't know, the Capital for eBay Business Sellers program is something we've been running now for about 1.5 years. It was set up originally to try and help solve an issue that exists across small businesses in the UK today. So that is the access to capital. We'll talk about that as we get into it, but ultimately it's a problem which has been around forever. It's getting worse, not better, and it stops eBay businesses from growing. It stops them from moving to the next stage. It stops them from professionalizing and really becoming something more meaningful that they can really kind of take full time if that's not there already. So that's something which we set out to solve. That was about 1.5 years ago now. We work very closely with YouLend as our primary partner. We work with a couple of others as well. Through the program, we've distributed about 75-80 million pounds worth of well, not our money, our lenders' money, to businesses across the UK, funded a few thousand sellers. And they're liking it. They're coming back. We're seeing consistent changes in the growth and the sales they're making post-financing. So it's making a difference, and they're renewing at high rates, and the program has a long way to go, but it's really starting to make an impact. So I think it's important because not every seller on eBay uses it. Not every seller on eBay feels the same way around taking out financing. So I think these sessions are super important just to get a sense from not just me, but also from the sellers who use it, what exactly it is it does, what problems it solves, and potentially how it could work for you. So as a logical starting point, as with all good business problems, I guess the first thing to talk about really is what is the kind of problem that we were looking to solve, or what is the problem to solve that exists today still? It's not solved, which is historically the access to capital in the UK. So eBay has been in the business of trying to help businesses find capital now for quite some time, between our partnership with YouLend and the program we run today, but also what we used to do with PayPal Working Capital. We're not new to the game, so we're not strangers to the fact that there is a significant problem there. The moat is being dried up, and the access to capital is being pulled back. And I think that it's a really interesting topic to just kind of understand, because some of you in the room may have lived it. I know that some of these guys have from talking to you earlier. So I would love to, off the start, get a view from the sellers. Have you guys tried accessing financing from the means you're supposed to, whether that's your bank or your building society or the government?
I'll go first. Yeah. So we've borrowed £100,000 from YouLend about 15 months ago. Initially, we had a few conversations with normal institutions. They wanted years of accounts, they wanted cash flow forecasts, they wanted, to be honest, loads of information, which when you're a fast-paced growing business was A, quite difficult to produce, B, wasn't going to produce it in a methodical way which was going to make it easy for me to do and for them to actually understand. And essentially spoke with eBay, and then who obviously then introduced me to YouLend, and we, to be honest, the process was, because we've obviously got the track record of what I'm selling on eBay, we're able to see very quickly my turnover, and the fact that I had a very good consistent level of sales and growth, that we were able to, warrant a £100,000 loan. And to be honest, the questions weren't difficult, and we got the money within a few days. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But
I found the process to be as simple as that as well. Just to echo that as well, I know I don't want to get political about it or anything, but our government isn't that interested in small businesses. They might claim they are, but they're really not. And the banks aren't either. I mean, I bank with a Barclaycard, and similar process really. To be fair, it's we're a very, very small fish really in comparison to obviously what they're dealing with, and I could never get an answer from the bank. It was a really difficult process, and similar. I called eBay as well because I've used PayPal working capital previously. Actually, it was pretty good, and see. You guys stopped dealing with them, and I just said, look, is there another option? And then got introduced to YouLend. We didn't borrow as much. We borrowed £20,000, and this was back in March, and we've just about paid it all back now. But this is what I would say. Everybody in this room, you will need some money. If you want to grow, you are going to need capital in your business. And whether it's to survive or whether it is to grow, you're going to need it. And the rate that you get from YouLend is... Sorry, I feel like I'm being watched by the YouLend people, and they're like, please say something nice. But it's true, they are actually really good. And the process was easy. The money was in our account within the space of a day. And literally that same day, we signed a premises on a new building, which was next door to us, allowing us then to actually pay back their loan really fast. It is really important that you have these kind of options, and like I say, YouLend for us has been a real godsend. And
interestingly, it's not all roses. You had a bad experience in between, right? You mentioned.
I mean, look, I think it's great that eBay are always looking to try to work with these partners. I don't know if anyone remembers Astro. Was it Astro? Asto, thank you. That were owned by Santander. And they were dreadful. They were like, without being disrespectful, they were really bad. They hadn't developed their app properly. It worked on Apple, and I'm sorry, I'm not an Apple person. I still love my Android. I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to it. But and their app didn't work on Android. A lot of the time, their automatic payments didn't work, and I was having to manually do it, and I would forget to manually do it, and then they would send me threatening letters, and I'm like, well, it should have come out automatically. And in the end, we only borrowed about 10 grand from them, but I said, look, here's all your loan back, and I don't want to deal with you anymore because it was just too much of a headache. This is so much simpler. YouLend will look at, as Will's already said, they look at what you've done in terms of sales and gone, yep, you can pay it back really quickly, or you can pay it back really easily. And there you go. And I think they said earlier, I think it's like 70% of businesses are now are being successful with regards to their application now. So it's obviously working.
We came out of that looking pretty good, Jakob.
Let me start then. Yeah. The only so I suppose what I'm going to add to the bit of we'll take off the rose tinted bit now. Things which I would, and I've said to Jakob and Lawrence already, the term. I've said to them, I had a year. I want longer. And I've said to Jakob, you guys have got to, if you put £100,000 into your business, you're then looking at trying to get £3,000 every week back to YouLend. And it is robotic. You've got to find £3,000 in your cash flow every week to go back to YouLend. So therefore, don't be mistaken, they want their money back. So you have to then think about it quite sensibly and say, will my business generate £3,000 surplus on my cash flow in order to be able to make sure they get their money every week. So, put that into your plan before you even start to think about what you're going to do with the money. You've got to pay it back. So there were weeks, I would say, not often, we were lucky, we've had a good run, where I'm having to balance paying suppliers, paying staff, paying other people, in order to ensure that I've got my £3,000 back, because I don't want to default with YouLend. I don't want them to think that I'm not worthy of having another loan in the future. So therefore, all I would say is good cash flow forecasting or planning is imperative to ensure that you get your I suppose eggs lined up to get their money back. Having said that, we didn't default. We've repaid it. I probably will be going back for another loan at some point soon. Jakob, do me a favour. I would say, make sure that you can repay it. The other part is that we had over a year, and that year period, if you put £100,000 into your business, it's only in for 1 year. So you've got to then realise very quickly that that money's out of your business after 52 weeks. So therefore, it will only give you a step up for a short period of time, and then your business is back to where it was. Hopefully, it's a little bit bigger than it was before you had the 100 grand. So if you go back in again for another loan, when it comes back out at the end, what you're looking for is that your business has got over that little hurdle, you've made it a little bit bigger, or you've used it to get through a bit of a tough patch and you come out the other side. Hence why I've said I want longer periods of time. I would love a 3-year or 4 or 5 or 10-year option in order to be able to just keep that business money in my business, so I can turn that £100,000 not just once and get it back out. I can turn it 3, 4, 5 times in that period and do much more help to my business. So and that's something which I'm sure you can ask Jakob about.
Is there anything you want to add to that, mate? If you pass there.
So I think on the first of all, I think it's really nice to hear your experiences. Generally, YouLend was built because we saw that small businesses were struggling to access financing. It was often a cumbersome process, and often it would lead to a no. Jason and Will have both received what I think of as relatively large amounts. We finance sellers that need as little as £500, euros, where we often see that the banks don't really want to move. I think in response to your point, Will, so Will took out financing with regular repayments. We've since launched a variable repayment product with the eBay team, where your repayments are in line with your sales, where we take a percentage of your sales, very similar to what you saw with PayPal working capital, where you get that flexibility. I think in response to your point, Will, around longer terms, it's definitely something we're looking at. It's openly been quite a difficult time because of all the macroeconomic volatility to get comfortable with long-dated lending, but it's something that we start to get comfortable with through the partnership with eBay and through the data that we get that can help us understand the sellers. So definitely noted.
I mean, that kind of leads in quite nicely to the question I was, going to go to next, which is around technology and data in the space and how that is liable to change things. Obviously longer terms, fine, but I guess the technology is useful, and I suppose that YouLend would probably call yourselves a fintech rather than a lender, or at least a technology company, if you don't want to kind of term it to you specifically. But I guess as the technology improves, as long as it's not for its own sake, it will increase the efficiency in the lending. It will make it easier to access, it'll make it faster, it'll make it more seamless, it'll make it more flexible. It could be any of those things. Like, where do you see the kind of YouLend product or like the lending and the space going?
So I think there's 3 places where we've really been investing technology time in trying to build a better seller financing experience. So one is around the application experience. So drawing on some of the data that eBay has access to, but also some of the data that's publicly available to make the application process smooth, to not need management accounts or cash flow forecasts, and to try and be able to form a view on how the business is doing based on other data sources that are available. So really, I think the median time to apply is 3 or 4 minutes or something like that. It's a little bit larger when you're a larger, more complex business, but we've really tried to invest in making the application experience seamless. The second place where we are investing technology time is around the flexibility of repayments, so enabling the sales-based repayments, so you don't have to worry every week about whether you find £3,000, but we can flex the repayments in line with your sales. The third place, which is a place you probably won't see very much as sellers, but which is actually really key for us, is around how we make our decisions. So automating the decision making, so we don't need to look as carefully at every application, which allows us to finance some of the smaller sellers that may otherwise be quite hard to reach for the banks. So you could say YouLend's game not customer first, but YouLend's game is to try and make as many automated decisions as possible so that we can serve a very broad range of you very cheaply. And then we work with eBay to help get close to you and understand you well enough to say yes to as many as possible. But I think it's really around automation, data access, and sales-based repayments.
I mean, you mentioned that there's, trying to offer to as broad a stable of sellers as you possibly can. I guess what I've noticed in the time that I've been at eBay and watching this program is it's clear that there is no one use case or one use for financing. It can be, I think you took a lease on a warehouse. I mean, inventory is the most common, but I mean, it could be anything, right? It's the business that knows what it is it needs to do to go to the next level, to grow, and what's holding it back. It'd be good to know, again, you mentioned the warehousing space, like what did you guys use the money for that you took out? Just
Yeah, so really it was opportunity. We saw a need to open a subsidiary to our already growing company. We wanted to open up a spares department, if you like, within Rocket Railways. We noticed as well a lot of people were moving to looking for a more sustainable product as well. So we started to expand our range, and in order to do it, we needed the space. We needed the racking, and of course, we needed the stock, and we needed somebody to actually go and run the thing as well. So that's what we used it for, and I guess that's the thing you see, and similar to what Will was saying as well, is it's planning. So it's planning how much you need, how are you going to pay it back, what do you actually need it for, but we will all need it for something. And I'll be doing the same once we've repaid this one. We will be coming back again because I've got big plans to go to the next step with regards to the company as well. But always sort of backwards plan the business. And yeah, that's what we used it for. But I guess that's the thing. That's the difference, I suppose, as well. Is that I don't know if any of you guys used PayPal working capital, but they always put, what are you using it for? And you almost had to kind of guess the algorithm in order to be successful. So, and I did it before with PayPal, where it just said I'd pay back my capital really fast on PayPal. I wasn't too bothered about sort of terms and stuff and how quickly we paid it back. If it's got to be paid back, if I can pay it back quickly, then fine. But the thing is that even when I did it with on PayPal, even though they could see I'm good at repaying everything, they would just all of a sudden say, oh, no, we're not supplying this category, or no, we're not supplying because we're not supplying capital for what you actually need it for. Whereas I hope that YouLend never go down that road. At the end of the day, if we're good at paying back, then it shouldn't matter what we use the money for. But we'll all need it for a different reason.
How about you?
We used it primarily for stock. So, yeah, we got the loan around September last year, and just coming into that Christmas peak, we used it to fund additional purchases, do a few more opportunistic things, which perhaps without that cash being there, we wouldn't have been able to have done. And then have used that to roll all the way through to we're being a clothing retailer. We obviously have a very good Christmas, but then it rolls into quite a big, long spring, summer range. And that has just essentially helped us to hit the ground running really well from January, February. We're buying excess stocks from factories. So when the factories finish manufacturing for one of the high street labels, they want to clear that stock out pretty quick. So by going with cash available to buy straight away, as opposed to talking to a bank, trying to get a loan or an overdraft in place, having that and knowing that cash was available, it makes our negotiating a lot simpler. We'll just spot buy when we saw things. So yeah, primarily stock.
I mean, one's not better than the other, but it is interesting in terms of like the most common use case is inventory. But I think it's the difference between like short-term investment in the business or short-term gains. You can make yourself have a great Q4, but also you can invest in the long-term kind of productive capacity of the business in the maximum output, which is, I guess, things like warehousing space and staff and effectively the maximum size of the business rather than just it could be either, right? Does that reflect, I think, Jakob, what most people would take the funding for?
I think most people take funding to try and grow their business. There's also some business who take funding to get them through a quiet period. We had an example of a sunglass vendor who took out financing in December, had very low sales for 4 or 5 months, and then started to hit the sunglass season. And you really see the spike. It's incredible how volatile that business is. And they took financing during the low periods to make sure they could pay suppliers and keep the staff on. So I think we see both the sort of the growth story, but also the sort of survival story or the get through story to the next period. I think there's some stats recently published by eBay showing how much eBay sellers usually grow. I think growth story is the dominant reason for the capital. I think we saw 25% higher sales in the 6 months after. So there is something about that boost and then finding a way to make it sustainable afterwards.
But YouLend doesn't ask what you're using the money for, in fact.
So a little bit of history in it. We used to ask about it, but we found that it was not really a very good risk flag. One, people don't necessarily tell the truth, they try and game it. And it wasn't really that important information for us. We didn't find it helped us understand anything. So it was just like another thing you had to check, and it would go in some reporting, but it didn't really change what anybody was doing. So we thought, let's just not ask, not waste people's time.
Interesting.
Again,
but it's totally unconstrained, right? You can use it for anything.
From a personal perspective or from a kind of user research perspective, we care a lot about what people use it for because it means a lot to how funds will get paid back, and it means a lot to how we should distribute and position it. So we care a lot about it. We just don't ask about it in the application. We'll talk to you guys afterwards.
Have you ever had any instances of anybody using it for anything odd or anything like on those lines? I mean, they could just take it and buy a Ferrari, right? They're probably a bit of a bad investment for the business, but
I think the most you could say, I think buying stock, investing in advertising, investing in premises, those are kind of pretty simple things. We've seen a few more acquisitions recently. So we also finance bricks and mortar businesses. We financed a restaurant that was buying 3 Pizza Express chains during COVID when there was lockdown. So we see a bit more of this opportunistic M&A purchases during times of volatility. But it tends to be pretty standard, like 90% of everything is basically trying to invest or solve cash flow problems.
I think for me, and I'm sure everybody at eBay here, I mean, we all, we're all here because we all sell on eBay and it's a fantastic platform to use. But we do have other places that we sell. So we have our own bricks and mortar store. We also sell over multiple eBay channels as well because, and we do that because we don't want to blur the lines of what our company does. So that's why we have them separately. And what I would really love for YouLend to do is to actually go, okay, well, if you are taking car payments from bricks and mortar, because we're pretty much cashless now, is to actually say, well, let us put that into your application, and then hopefully we'll be able to then have access to a bit more. So I think for me, it's just going that little one step further as well. And as you said, the whole idea is that you want to get closer to eBay sales and to eBay sellers. Sorry. So I think for me that would be from a tech point of view anyway. That would be really, really handy.
Cool. Do you have anything else you want to add on any of the things we've talked about, or see if there's anyone in the room who would like to? I can pass you the mic, or do you want to shout? No, yeah.
What would happen to the 30% that don't make it? What advice do you give to them?
You mean the people who don't get offers? I think that's probably one for Jakob. I think. Yeah.
So today eBay business capital is surfaced to sellers that we think are eligible. For the 20% that don't get an offer, we're exploring whether there's other providers we can work with. Lawrence probably has a little bit more context on that. I think we'll tend to provide feedback where we can on why the application failed. Sometimes it's a matter of coming back at a later stage where sales are different, or it's sometimes things you can do to change your own credit profile. So we sometimes give personalized feedback where we can. The reasons why we decline tend to vary a lot, so it tends to be very personalized. I don't know, Lawrence, do you want to share a little bit about the pilot?
When it comes to YouLend specifically, it's not, we don't make the decisions. It's not our balance sheet. It's not our credit model. We don't decide whether or not someone gets approved. We work with YouLend because they approve an incredibly high number relative to the market, but they can't approve everybody. What we'd love to do is to have a second look program where there is a journey where we send people to YouLend. If YouLend can't help them, they send them onwards. It gets difficult just because how we communicate that to you guys without it being just a mess is hard. And you don't want to be, and it makes things exponentially worse if you get declined once and you get forwarded on, you get declined twice. By that point, you're absolutely fuming. So it's a really hard thing to manage. We'd love to, have that program set up where we can find the right person for you, because there probably is someone who would lend in all cases. And we're working on it. It's just it's difficult to make a customer journey that makes sense and is easy to communicate and doesn't lead to a worse experience rather than a better one. Is not always straightforward.
What are the fees? Because I know if you go to, you know, one of the big four banks, it's an arrangement fee of 2%. You know, they want the house, the kids, everything.
They can have them.
The back,
The kids,
before
anyway.
they'll even have a seat. So what's the, you know, if someone came to you?
So the range of fees is from 3% of the financed amount to 16, as far as I recall. There may be a 1 or 2 point I'm wrong on, but that's the range. But you will usually be offered a range of options by us, so you can receive smaller amounts or larger amounts with different repayment times, and the fee will vary based on which one you choose. So you'll get a bit of flexibility if you receive an offer to where price varies the longer you need the financing for.
One reason why we kind of prefer what I say is called a merchant cash advance product is what YouLend offers versus a traditional loan is that it doesn't carry an APR, so it doesn't compound. You know, if and it's why the sales-based component is important. Is then you agree amount up front, you agree a fee up front. Neither of those things change, no matter how long it takes to repay. So if you take out the funding and then actually sales don't take off as much as you'd hope they would, and the funding takes actually 3 times longer to repay than you thought it was going to, the fee doesn't change. The fee is what it is, it just takes longer to repay. Joining. Cool.